Okay, hi friends, welcome to Strings and Whiskey. This is my first attempt at doing what I think is called a YouTube vlog. I've no idea how it's going to go. It's just a thing that I've been inspired by a number of people to do, to just use some of whatever creativity I've got, have a chat, have a laugh, tell some stories maybe, and maybe play some guitar if the feeling is right, talk about songwriting. So it's a kind of loose magazine, very little editing to go on, if any, I hope. Yeah, let's see how it goes. So I thought I'd start off by talking about a hero of mine whose birthday is going to be in a few weeks' time, on the 12th of March. He was born on the 12th of March 1948, so that makes him going to be 77. And I first came across this guy when I was probably about 14 or 15, something like that. And a friend of mine lent me an LP. For those of you who don't know that now, that's a long playing vinyl record. An LP by Blood, Sweat and Tears. And on it was a track called Fire and Rain. So that should give you some idea that I'm talking about James Taylor. But this was Blood, Sweat and Tears version of it. For me, it stood out on the album as being something special. And it wasn't until some time later that I realised that in fact the songwriter was James Taylor. And that song has stuck with me through all these years now. And I still hear it, and I still hear it fresh. And I've learnt how to play it after a fashion on my guitar and play and sing it. He is a special kind of guy in my eyes. The way he puts a song together makes you totally believe what he's telling you. And this particular song, for instance, is about his time in a rehab unit in America. And he met a girl in there. They became friends. He left the rehab unit and came over to the UK to try and kickstart his career, which had fallen to pieces in America. He was part of a band called Flying Machine, and that had fallen to pieces. He had a serious drugs problem, so he was in a bad way. And he came over to the UK. God knows how you do this, but he met the Beatles. And they agreed to sign him as their first signing for Apple Records. And he made that first album, James Taylor. At the end of the album, he was told that this girl that he'd met some time ago in America at this rehab unit had in fact committed suicide. Her name was Suzanne. And so he wrote the song Fire and Rain because he was saddened by her loss. And so if you listen to the lyrics, I could sing them to you, but that would get this video banned probably on YouTube. If you listen to the lyrics, you can hear him talking about Suzanne. You can hear him talking about his old band, the Flying Machine, which is in pieces on the ground, he says. So that had a large effect on me, and it stayed with me ever since. I've been lucky enough to see James Taylor a couple of times live. Once way back when my son was just starting to play guitar, we saw him in London, and then more recently saw him in Brighton. And somehow we had tickets literally in the front row, yards from him. It wasn't planned, it's just the way it worked out. and I was able to go up and shake his hand at half time. He took a lot of time talking personally to the audience, shaking hands, both during the break in the set and at the end. Yeah, he's a special guy, and it kind of brings me on to another topic of this video. That is that I'm worried about music generally. There's people like me who are getting on as well, who play the guitar, play it live, occasionally, when my voice will work, play it live, but the people who are still filling stadiums are by and large older than me, and that's a bad thing, because what can be passed on to the new generations of musicians, if you think about Paul McCartney, Rolling Stones, Paul Simon, James Taylor, they're all very definitely at the end of their careers, no matter that some of them are still absolutely brilliant. I think James Taylor's about to have another album come out, and his last album was absolutely brilliant. So it's a problem. Interestingly, I watched a video of Taylor Swift live, short video, and in that she introduces James Taylor onto the stage, and she explains that her name is Taylor Swift because her mum and dad had named her after James Taylor. And so there she is, sitting on the stage in this sort of big dress with a guitar, and on comes James Taylor, and he sits on the end of this sort of settee that she's got on the stage, and crowd goes mad. Now the crowd is made up of very young girls, and young people, and the crowd goes bonkers. There's this 5-year-old man walks onto the stage, and the crowd goes bonkers. She talks about James Taylor and being named after him, and he begins to play the intro to Fire and Rain, right? A song which was recorded, somewhere around 1970. And the crowd erupts again. And so he sings a duet with Taylor Swift, playing Fire and Rain. Camera pans round to the audience, and the audience are all singing the words to a song recorded in 1970. But I don't know a single Taylor Swift song, and I bet if you went out into the world and picked on 10 people and said, name me a Taylor Swift song, I very much doubt whether anybody could name a song, or if they could, it would be one or two. And yet when you think about the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, people could name many, many of them. And so given that Taylor Swift is the biggest musical phenomenon around, that's a sad indictment of where we're going. So yeah, it worries me. And now we've got a bigger thing coming along. It's been with us for a little while now, called AI, artificial intelligence. And the ridiculous thing is that you can instruct AI to say, write me a song in the style of James Taylor, say, for instance. Make it sung in his voice and with a similar guitar style to him. And AI will produce that for you. And it's getting better and better at doing that. So in the Spotify charts now, there are a number of artists, and all they are is AI creations, but they are getting millions of streams on Spotify, and therefore somebody is making that money, and that somebody though is not a creative artist. AI has just taken some sounds that it's picked up from around the web, listened to some James Taylor stuff, and then put this together. The creative act had already taken place 50 years ago. But it's put together, and people hear it now, young people hear it now, and they think this is music. But it's not music. It's certainly not creativity. I've been watching some videos by a guy called Andy Edwards, who I've come across recently, having been alerted to him because he was interviewed on the Rick Beato channel, and Rick Beato is a YouTube musical god. Andy Edwards says that he doesn't think that AI poses a real problem to creativity in the end, because people will just not listen to it. That live music will become much more important than it is now, because people will crave that instant creativity rather than that manufactured sound. Cheers, by the way. This channel is called Strings and Whisky because I like playing the guitar, and I wanted to try and bring some aspect of that to this channel. And recently I've taken to trying different kinds of whiskies, and so in fact my son suggested that this might be a good name for the channel. Indeed, he's the one who designed the sort of logo that comes up at the beginning, which I quite like. And if you heard that, that's him texting me on WhatsApp. So yeah, where was I? Yeah, AI. So I think in the short term it could be dangerous, because it can fool people into believing that what they're listening to is real, and it's not real, it's not creative, it's not human. And so when James Taylor sings about just yesterday morning they let me know you were gone, Suzanne, the plans they made put an end to you, he means that. Well, there's no computer, no artificial intelligence on earth that can summon up that kind of emotion when he tells you that there's a cold wind blowing behind him, and that his band Flying Machine is in pieces on the ground, which was what he saw as his vehicle to getting his music available to people. When he says that's some pieces on the ground, no computer's going to come close to that. So yeah, let's hope that Andy Edwards is right. I'll put a link to Andy Edwards and Rick Beato. There's my son again. Next one, I'll remember to turn the phone off. Let's hope that Andy Edwards is right, and that creativity won't be stifled, and that maybe live music will become more important than it is now, and not such a disposable commodity. You know, if you're playing in a pub it's nice if people are listening to what you're singing, especially if some of those songs are songs that you've written. But the reality is that a lot of people are there to get pissed, and they're not taking very much notice of you at all. So, when you do get a round of applause, and it does happen, it does happen, that's important. So if live music itself became more important to people, then I think we'll all be better off, because if live music is art, and art is important to us as humans, after all, men and women have been making art since time immemorial, from the time that they put their hand on a cave wall and spat some colour around it and left that there for us to find tens of thousands of years later. That was their art. Or a depiction of a hunting scene, that was their art. So when we come forward, I don't know, 10, 20, 30,000 years, and James Taylor says, just yesterday morning they let me know you were gone. That's our art today. And the two are just as relevant to one another. So, anyway, I'm hoping that live music gets more important as the years go by. Talking of live music and talking of songs that I may have written, I'm part of a band called the Tailor Made Band. My son Alex, who keeps interrupting on the phone, he plays lead guitar and some backing vocals. I sing and play what I think is accompanying guitar, rhythm guitars, maybe. A friend called Drew, he plays the bass and some backing vocals, and then we've got Jezza on drums. And we play a set that includes a lot of what we call melodic rock covers, but also songs that we've written ourselves. And lately I've been finding that that songwriting process has sort of dried up a bit, and you think, well, why is that? Why does that happen? I've got lots of words written down, lots of sounds, chord progressions, and what have you on the guitar, but they're not coming together, and so it's I suppose that's called writer's block, isn't it? And it's not total, because, as I say, I've got bits and pieces, but nothing seems to coalesce. And when I've written the songs in the past, that idea of something coalescing is very, very real, and you almost feel like you're not doing it yourself. It's just going blip out onto the page or into the microphone, and so that's not happening at the moment. So if any of you have got any suggestions as to how you can release that blockage, then put them in the comments below. If you've got any comments about some of the things I've been discussing or about to discuss, then put them in the comments below. One of the things that I have noticed is that music doesn't have to be complicated. It has to sound different to make people interested. I think Sting said once that if a song hasn't got his attention within 10 seconds, he'll turn it off. So something's got to happen which is of interest in 10 seconds. And so an example of that would be a song by Mark Knopfler, which I've always loved. It's called In the Sky, and it's the last track off of his album Kill to Get Crimson. It's quite a long track, about 6.5 minutes or something like that, and it starts with this lovely little guitar solo, but actually it's only really 3 chords all the way through, but when you hear it, it sounds complicated. I'm going to try and play a little bit of it. I don't know how this is going to come off, but really it's all based around the C shape, the F shape, and then move that up, G shape, and it starts off, are you home from the sea, my soul balladeer, been away roaming, far away from here. I better leave it at that, otherwise YouTube might hear it. But it starts with a little intro. So that always took me, a few mistakes there, that always really got me, because my wife and I had packed up our jobs and we went sailing for 6 months, 5 months, and so that song, Are You Home from the Sea, my soul balladeer, again it strikes a chord. Actually, that's something that I've noticed about really, really good songwriters, is they'll write words and a piece of music to go with it that somehow are about me or you. You know, it somehow strikes a chord that what they're saying is about you, and they understand your fear or your love or your enjoyment or your happiness at well, it's not a lovely day, but you know what I'm saying. And I used to say that people like Sting or Paul Simon or James Taylor, I always imagine that they must be out in my front garden listening to what's going on in this house, because they seem to write songs about what's happening to me at that time, and that's why they're so good. But Taylor Swift, not so much. Anyway, I think I'm probably about done. I've never done anything like this before, so apologies if it's there's lots of ums and ahs I've noticed, so apologies for that. Never done it before. I've produced this live and pretty much unscripted. I've got a couple of bullet points down here just so that I can try and go from one thing to the next. But I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have enjoyed it, then hit the subscribe button, tell your friends, or pass it on to them. It's meant to be just a bit of fun, and I want to get some feedback, as long as it's nice. Yeah, I want to get some feedback, so if you've got some thoughts on what I'm talking about, then stick them in the comments down below, and I'll hopefully see you again in the not too distant future. So thanks very much. Cheers and bye.